You have been told, since the moment you were capable of understanding language, that freedom is defined by choice. You believe you are free because you can think, because you can decide, because you can believe, desire, and act. But what if that very definition of freedom is the foundational layer of the illusion? What if the thoughts echoing in your mind at 3 a.m., the anxieties that suffocate your chest, the sudden spikes of anger, and the endless, exhausting desires that propel you through life, were never truly your own? For centuries, the deepest mystics of the ancient world taught a terrifying truth. Ignorance is not simply a lack of information. Ignorance is an active, predatory energy. It is the invisible architecture that keeps humanity in a state of perpetual hypnosis. They spoke of entities known as They are the architects of deception. They are not demons with horns and pitchforks. They are forces of psychic inversion. They weave thought patterns and emotional frequencies like invisible webs, designed to convince you that the cage you live in is the open sky, and the heavy iron chain around your neck is merely your own reflection. But buried beneath the sands of history is a truth sharp enough to cut through the matrix of this reality. The Archons are not gods. They are ontological distortions. Their greatest power lies entirely in our forgetting, and their most profound, paralyzing fear is that you will finally look into the mirror and see not only the manipulation, but who you truly, originally are. The ancient Gnostics discovered an inner science, a sacred, mechanical method of perception that dissolves the Archonic grid completely. It requires no temples, no priests, no blood sacrifices. You are not about to hear a mythological fairy tale. You are about to be handed the method the Archons fear most, the ancient science of freeing human perception. To truly grasp the magnitude of the weapon the Gnostics left us, we must excavate the story before religion was weaponized by empires, before history was rewritten to veil the deeper truth. In 1945, beneath the cliffs of Nag Hammadi, Egypt, a sealed jar was unearthed. Inside were texts that had been buried for over 1,600 years. The Gospel of Thomas, the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Mary. These were the forbidden scriptures, hunted to near extinction by the Orthodox Church in the 4th century. Why were they so dangerous? Because they bypassed the institutional hierarchy. The Gnostics, meaning those who know, taught that the material world is not the ultimate reality. It is a counterfeit, a holographic projection cast by an ignorant, imperfect creator known as the Demiurge, or Yaldabaoth. According to the Apocryphon of John, a cosmic tragedy occurred before the dawn of time. Sophia, the embodiment of divine wisdom, acting without the consent of the ultimate source, accidentally manifested an anomaly. Blind, arrogant, and severed from the true light, Yaldabaoth declared, "I am God, and there is no other God beside me." He created the material universe not as a paradise, but as a labyrinth. And to manage this labyrinth, he generated the Archons, the rulers. To the Gnostics, humanity is caught in a hostage situation. We are divine in origin, carrying a spark of the uncreated, primordial light from the true source, yet we are born asleep, trapped inside a biological spacesuit, navigating a dream shaped by lesser powers. In the Gospel of Mary, the Savior issues a devastating diagnosis of the human condition. He warns that matter gives birth to a passion that has no equal, a fever of the soul that arises when it forgets its cosmic origin. The Archons amplify this fever. They do not demand your worship. They demand your distraction. If we are to dismantle the invisible prison, we must understand the anatomy of our captors. The Archons are not physical monsters hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy. They are parasites of consciousness. They are echoes born when divine light collided with dense matter. Because they are severed from the true source, the Archons lack the divine spark. They possess no innate creative power. They cannot generate life, light, or original thought. They can only replicate, imitate, and invert. They are masters of counterfeit reality, and like any parasite, they require a host to survive. They depend entirely on human awareness that has forgotten itself. What is their food? Your emotional reactivity, your fear, your unconscious, negative responses to the illusions they project. When you feel the sudden, inexplicable pull of rage, the crushing weight of despair, the paralyzing grip of anxiety, or the toxic spiral of judgment. It is not always you who is generating it. It is the Archonic current, tugging at the strings of your psyche. They inject a thought into your minda, frequency of fear, and when your body responds with a surge of adrenaline, cortisol, and heavy emotion, they harvest that energetic output. Esoteric traditions often refer to this emotional harvest as Loosh. They whisper through collective belief systems, through the endless, terrifying cycles of the 24-hour news media. Through manufactured societal conflicts, they disguise limitation as logic and distraction as progress. In the hypostasis of the Archons, the reality of the rulers, the ancient text explicitly states that these forces rule over the mind, taking absolute delight in chaos and confusion. They want you reactive. They want you divided. They want you endlessly arguing with shadows on the wall of the cave. Because a mind at war with itself cannot realize it is a prisoner. But the Gnostics discovered the ultimate a code written into the human soul that the Archons cannot delete. Look at the architecture of the modern world. We are living in the ultimate, perfected, Archonic matrix. Every algorithm, every notification, every manufactured outrage is designed to keep your attention focused entirely outward, to keep you reacting. The Archons use fear as the master key because fear demands external vigilance. When you are terrified of the future, you are lost in their maze. But what happens when you stop reacting? What happens when you turn your gaze inward? The Gnostics taught that the ultimate weapon against the Archonic grid is not a sword, not a political revolution, and not even a prayer of blind faith. It is the sacred, devastating act of remembering. In the Apocryphon of John, the Savior reveals that humanity was created with a spark of the divine realm hidden deep within the dense shell of matter, specifically so that the Archons could never destroy it. That spark is your pure, unconditioned awareness. It is the silent observer behind your thoughts. The Archons cannot stand before the vision of the light. And this light is not a mystical beam from the sky. It is consciousness. When a human being looks inward and faces their terror, their trauma, and their intrusive thoughts with absolute, unmoving stillness, the illusion collapses like smoke exposed to a hurricane. Think of it geometrically. Darkness is not an actual force. It is merely the absence of light. The moment consciousness is switched on, the shadow has no ontological space to exist. This is why Jesus, in the Forbidden Gospel of Thomas, delivers the ultimate formula for liberation. When you make the two one, when you make the inner as the outer and the outer as the inner, then you will enter the kingdom. The kingdom of heaven is not a gated community in the clouds you visit after you die. It is an elevated state of cognitive and spiritual awareness, entirely untouched by the Archonic illusion. And your awareness is the one frequency the Archons cannot hack. The Gnostics never meant for this knowledge to be locked in a museum or debated by theologians. They called it living knowledge gnosis. It is a sword that only cuts when it is wielded in real time. So, how do you apply this ancient science today? How do you starve the Archons and break the invisible chains of your own mind? The method is devastatingly simple, and it requires the courage of a warrior. You must learn to see not with your biological eyes, but with awareness itself. Tomorrow, when the anxiety hits your chest, when the sudden surge of anger or unworthiness floods your brain, do not push it away. Do not judge it. And most importantly, do not identify with it. Do not say, I am angry. Instead, become the silent witness. Observe the emotion as if you are watching a dark cloud pass across a clear blue sky. This act of witnessing is the Gnostic Sword. When you observe a thought without attaching your identity to it, you sever the feeding tube. You reclaim the energy that would have been harvested by the Archons. Pause. Feel where the fear lives in your body. Illuminate it with your attention and say inwardly, I see you. You are an illusion. You have no power here. That single act of cognitive defiance dissolves the matrix faster than 1,000 desperate prayers. Because when you look directly at the darkness without collapsing into it, you expose it as a counterfeit. Every emotion, every trigger, every shadow becomes sacred fuel for your awakening. This is the true, hidden ritual of the ancients. No temples required. No incense. No intermediaries. The altar is your awareness. The prayer is your attention. When you stop energizing fear, something miraculous happens. The dense noise of the world softens. The things that used to trigger you lose their gravitational pull, and an unshakable, quiet power begins to emerge from the center of your chest. You are remembering the pleroma, the divine fullness. The Archons tremble before a soul that remembers. Because when you awaken to the source within, you realize you were never actually a prisoner. The walls of the cage were made entirely of thought. Every time you choose stillness over fear, you reclaim your divine inheritance. The revolution is happening inside your mind. Close your eyes, breathe, and remember the light. Once you see through the illusion, there is no going back to sleep.